Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. This weekend marks the 40th anniversary of Wolfgang Petersen's German submarine masterpiece, Das Boot. I spoke about the submarine genre with Gerard Butler during the release of his 2018 action thriller, Hunter Killer. And be sure to stick around to hear him spoof the Phantom of the Opera. We are here with...
Gerard Butler.
I love how you said that. He's got a lot of energy today. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
Now,
beautiful view, by the way. Look at what this is. This is definitely Washington, all right.
Yeah. We're sitting here for the benefit of radio, so you can't see what the heck we're talking about. We're here at the museum, and we're looking out at the Capitol and basically all the buildings you've saved over the years that the Olympus had fallen and everything else. We'll get to that in a second. But I know the story, you know the story, but let's just before we get any far into the interview, just give us a quick primer on my listeners who don't know what it's about, what the story's about.
It's Hunter Killer is actually a type of fast attack nuclear submarine that the U.S. have, which locates and destroys enemy subs and surface ships with stealth. And basically, at the beginning of the movie, 2 submarines go down in mysterious circumstances, one Russian, one US. Nobody quite knows what's going on. And from there, it becomes this kind of 3-pronged attack. I play Captain Joe Glass, who's sent out on Hunter Killer to find out what's going on under the ice and where these subs went down. Whereas all the minds in the war room fight it out in Washington, and we have to send in this clandestine Black Ops team into Russia. And we find out that nothing is really going as expected, and things unfold. Basically becomes this incredibly claustrophobic, tense movie about a bunch of men trying to stop a machinery that's taken us to war. So it's very exhilarating feeling, pretty much right from the start. You're grabbing the edge of your seat.
Yeah, you mentioned the claustrophobia, and that instantly, brings to mind all the other, Hunt for Red October, and of course, probably the most iconic, like Das Boot. There's been so many good ones. But were you a big fan of those going into this, or were those playing in your mind as you're filming these claustrophobic scenes?
Huge fan of those movies. Like probably 2 of my top 5 and 3 of my top 10 movies are submarine movies, and because there's no better place, there isn't a better space to put nail-biting, claustrophobic, tense, contained drama.
Death is all around you.
And anywhere in the universe. Yeah, not just death, but horrible death. It's like, and we were always reminding our submariners, it's not just you get hit by a torpedo. What does that mean? Yeah. Freezing cold water pouring in at high pressure, your body imploding, asphyxiation, carbon dioxide. Like, it's a terrifying place to be, but also an incredibly exciting, adventurous place to be, which is what this movie is. It's all of those things.
Yeah, it's not quite like the room we're in now. There's no water coming in here. It might be terrifying in different ways, but awesome. And of course, we can't bury the lead. Your co-star here, the Admirable, Gary Oldman, fresh off his long overdue Oscar. I mean, geez, we've been loving his stuff since like Leon the Professional. I'm talking like way back. I mean, he's probably doesn't change as a person since he's won for Winston Churchill. But but it's gotta be feel he can finally relax a little bit. But have you worked with him before? I can't remember. And what have you picked up from him? Or did you teach him everything?
I taught him everything. No, it's very funny though, because I met Gary literally my first week when I moved to London. A friend of mine was a casting director. She was casting the movie that he directed and wrote, Nil by Mouth. Yeah. And 3 weeks before, I had been a trainee lawyer. It had been a big life change for me. And suddenly I'm sitting in front of Gary Oldman, and he was so cool and humble and nice to me and giving me advice. And then suddenly I'm producing this movie, and we're like, okay, let's offer the role to Gary. And you go, how did this happen? And he's a very funny guy, great personality. And he's tough. He knows what he wants, but he commits. He gives you everything. And they really, in Donegan, this kind of blowhard general who's like, you understand. Well, what I love about this movie, I say that's a bit of an exaggeration because he is, you would say, more excessive in the warmongering department, but at the same time, you also understand where he's coming from. You understand all these opinions in the movie, the different kind of intellectual ideas in the war room, the different ideas of strategy in the sub, even with the SEALs behind enemy lines. And as an audience, you're very involved in those decisions. But he really committed to that role, and he brings so much energy and power and fear to the movie because he's the one really pushing for war.
Yeah, it's not, to your point. It's nice when even let's say the hawkish kind of characters, everybody has a motivation, no matter protagonist, antagonist, and that's what really makes a movie sail. No pun intended. But we also got to talk about. We got Russians, we got Americans. You're saving the Russian president. Clearly, screenplays are written way before current events happen. Movies take forever to get made. But were you guys cognizant of that? Just sort of the political things with, between Moscow, White House. What is some news going to break in the investigation while we're promoting the movie? Is that something that you guys play into, or even try to take advantage of? That it's kind of current.
Pretty much. That's the reason we made the movie, actually, is I had this script since 2011, and I always really wanted to make it, but it's a hard movie to make. The submarine genre had been made for a long time, but I knew if we can just get it off the ground and make it, people will go, now I know why I love those movies. But in saying that, even when I read the script in 2011, there wasn't anything going on between these guys. There wasn't any tension. So you thought, even with this situation, with subs disappearing, they would have forgiven each other. We'd have been fine. It might have been a bit of an argument. Then around 2015, we went, okay, I could see this now. There's fighter planes buzzing, U.S. warships, and a lot of other stuff going on, a bit of tension. So you had a completely different reaction when you read the script. So therefore, the audience would also have a different reaction. It suddenly felt very plausible that step by step this situation could unfold, that it could very, quickly escalate to the brink of war. And then we had a movie on our hands.
Yeah, so that actually kind of urged it a little bit as a producer. That kind of ramped it up and helped the financing, or
that's exactly literally. Because I called Millennium. We had it with another company, and then we got it out of there, and then it was right around then. And I called Millennium and said, guys, this is the time to make this movie. Because before I was even worried to make it. I always wanted to make it, but I was even worried to make it before that. In a way, it would fall on deaf ears. Right. People would go, it was fun and it was entertaining, but it was ridiculous. It's still ridiculous. Like you take the kernel of an idea and then you go to town with it, right? Sure. That's the idea behind great kind of action thrillers. But now a lot of people, we've been getting all these press reactions, and I'm surprised and very happy how many go, I could so see this happening, or I could completely believe that this situation could occur, or it made me fear where we are in the world.
Oh, the timing is definitely right. Yeah. So I'm glad. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise that it didn't happen back then. You waited for the right moment for it, so that's great. Yeah. So here you're saving that we have a kidnapped Russian president. Olympus has fallen. You have a kidnapped American president, and we will remind everyone that you guys beat White House down to the punch. So there we go. But what is it? What is it? What is it about you, man? Whenever there's a president in trouble, they call you. I mean, that's your new reputation now. You going to save any more?
We'll see. I hear that guy in the Philippines has been killing too many people. He might be a bit in trouble, so I may have to go down and save him. No, it's
a fun niche. I think
and the weird thing is, in some ways, saving the Russian president is. Weirdly, it feels like a small part of this movie, even though that is a lot of the motivation. Right. But you're so involved in every other decision because it's about myself facing off against this old Russian sea dog, this sea captain, this chess game between me and this other submarine captain, but the trust between me and my crew, the tension there because I don't know them. It's my first time in command, and we're thrown into this hellish situation, and they are questioning every move I make. And quite frankly, quite rightly so, because I'm making some wacky decisions. But it's if there ever was a time to think outside the box, this is it. So as an audience, you're completely, wrapped up in that drama. And in that you're kind of like, you're stuck in that room. There's no escape.
And speaking of that, and you've mentioned the claustrophobia, but what just dish on or dote on your director for a little bit. What made working with him so great compared to, let's say, I don't know, Fuqua or other ones in the past?
So I watched Donovan's movie I Number. I interviewed 10 directors for this movie, and it was going on over a couple of years. And then, weirdly enough, I got this little South African movie, this kind of fun little thriller. But I thought, I'm not going to like this. It looks cheap. And then I started watching. I was training in the gym, and then 10 minutes in, I go, oh, this is kind of cool. And there was there was such a presence and an energy to the way he moved the camera and how tight it was in the editing and how it brought you into this, again, that made the story very claustrophobic, and he had a beautiful way cinematically that he moved.
It made you work up a sweat even when you weren't on the treadmill.
Work up a sweat. Even, and to us, if we're going to make a submarine movie, one, it's a classic genre, but if you use a classic filmmaker, it's going to be a little too classic.
Right.
And he felt like somebody that could break out that room, bring it into the room and then break it out that room. And then we met and we had a great meeting. But I tell you what sealed it, and actually is what got me 300 was when I went the extra step. Didn't just do the meeting, but I ended up calling Alan Horn at Warner Brothers and said, you have to know how much I care about this. And that's what he did. He wrote me this letter and he said, I just want you to know, I know we had a good meeting, but I love this project and I'm the man for this. And I was like, okay, that wins it for me every time, and by the way, that's what he was like. I've never met such a hardworking, passionate, involved director. And he was great. No ego, because he understood his limitations of not having made a big movie before, where he could kind of hand it over and say, help.
Yeah. And when he wrote you that letter, did he end it with "P.S. I love you," or what did he? No, that was low hanging fruit. But no, but you mentioned 300, and of course, I'm always curious. Is that like a conscious thing? I mean, a lot of actors do it, but you've proven really adept at it. To go, I'm gonna go the macho roles here for a little bit here with 300 and Sparta and all that, and then I'm gonna switch it back and do some rom-coms with "P.S. I love you" or "The Ugly Truth" or hell, even Phantom of the Opera. I mean, so is that a conscious thing to try to go a little of both and keep the range going?
Yeah, I try to do all sorts of movies, even from like my Dear Frankies or Family Man, where you're playing a father and some kind of bonding with his kid, in Family Man, my kid had leukemia, and then Coriolanus, where I was doing Shakespeare, animated movies, How to Train Your Dragon. I love to keep it. I'm definitely best known for the action realm, but if I was only to do that, I would get incredibly bored, So I'm lucky enough to be able to play those different roles and therefore, to move from action into romantic comedy into some weird, quirky psychological thriller,
and a musical.
Or a musical. Yeah, my musical. I need to do a musical again. It's time.
It's been a while. That's what was that, like 2004, 5?
2003.
Do you keep your pipes? How do you keep the pipes going?
No, not as much as I used to. One of the fortunate things about Phantom was I always just sang, just for me, for fun. So
like in the shower.
And I was a shower singer, and it was kind of, and then suddenly I had to sing Music of the Night for Andrew Lloyd Webber, and by that point I think I did 2 singing lessons. I took my first singing lesson for Phantom of the Opera. But I can't say that I sing as much as I used to. And being back in New York, I was just thinking the other day, I need to start going and taking singing lessons just for the hell of it, just for fun, because it's a nice muscle to kind of keep toned.
Yeah, you're working the other muscles here. Now let's keep that muscle. Yeah. Well, that's interesting you said that to me. That sparked something. So what if you could do a musical? You said you want to do another one. What would be the dream one if it ever came down the pike?
And maybe it's a little too old-fashioned, but I love The Music Man. It's a great, and I don't know if maybe there's a way to update that or something, but I love the idea of going to Ohio, and pulling off something like that. But
I'd like to see that. And all right, well, I always like to end with some just fun off-the-wall question with your filmography. But if you could place your Phantom on this sub in Hunter Killer, if he's not singing Music of the Night, what would that song go like? I'm working other muscles for you. What would that song title be? Music of the...
Oh, yeah. The Phantom of the Opera is here. But where the hell is that sub?
That is so great. We can't top that. Let's cut it there. Again, everybody, it's called Hunter Killer. Gerard Butler, thank you so much. You're great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.
Hey, Nissan, how do you get to the top?
Calculating. Proceed to 1959. Take a hard left into East Africa at the 71 Safari Rally. Veer right for 19 off-road championships in the Baja Desert. Proceed towards Moab. Take the trail to Hell's Revenge. Include steep incline. Continue for the next 1,000,000 miles.
Where to first again?
60 years, millions of miles, and the capability to take you anywhere. This is the new Nissan.